you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
At CBS, we had been contacted by the CIA.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to the national news services, AP and UPI?
Well, again, I think we're getting into the kind of detail, Mr. Chairman, that I'd prefer to handle in executive session.
I think it was entirely in order for our correspondents at that time to make use of CIA agent chiefs of station and other members of the executive staff of CIA as sources of information which were useful in their assessments of world conditions.
Your administration continues to make the use of video news releases, which are prepackaged news stories sent to television stations, fully aware that some or many of these stations will air them without any disclaimer that they are produced by the government. Comptroller General of the United States this week said that raises ethical questions. Does it raise ethical questions about the use of government money to produce stories about the government that wind up being aired with no disclosure that they were produced by the government?
There is a Justice Department opinion that says these pieces are within the law so long as they're based upon facts, not advocacy. And I expect our agencies to adhere to that ruling, to that Justice Department opinion. This has been a long-standing practice of the federal government to use these types of videos. The Agricultural Department, as I understand, has been using these videos for a long period of time. The Defense Department, other departments have been doing so. It's important that they be based upon the guidelines set out by the Justice Department. Now, I think it'd be helpful if local stations then disclose to their viewers if that's, that this was based upon a factual report and they chose to use it. But evidently in some cases that's not the case. So anyway.
The administration could guarantee that's happening by including that language in the prepackaged report.
Yeah, I don't, look, oh, you mean a disclosure? I'm George W. Bush and I...
Well, some way to make sure it couldn't air without the disclosure that you believe is so vital.
Ken, there's a procedure that we're going to follow, and the local stations ought to, if there's a deep concern about that, ought to tell their viewers what they're watching.
Well, this might be old news to some, but last year it was confirmed that the U.S. military has been manipulating social media by using fake identities to influence conversations and spread pro-American propaganda. It's called Online Persona Management Services. And under the CENTCOM contract, it allows the creation of up to 10 sock puppet accounts for every U.S. serviceman or woman working on the program. The stipulations are that every fake persona must have a convincing background, history, and supporting friend networks so that it will remain undetectable from even the most sophisticated adversaries. According to The Guardian, the project has been likened by web experts to China's attempts to control and restrict free speech on the internet. And that critics are saying that it allows the U.S. military to create a false consensus in online conversations, crowd out unwelcome opinions, and smother commentaries or reports that do not correspond with its own objectives. Now, of course, according to CENTCOM, their only objective is to counter violent extremists and enemy propaganda outside of the U.S., and that it would be unlawful to address U.S. audiences with the technology. Wow, unlawful, really? Interesting. Because the newest version of the 2013 NDAA included an interesting amendment. This amendment legalized domestic propaganda on the American public. You heard me right. The newest NDAA wasn't just reauthorizing the indefinite detention of American citizens. It also allowed the U.S. government to legally carry out misinformation campaigns against the citizens of this country. But is this really surprising to anyone? I mean, the corporate media is basically a propaganda arm of the U.S. government anyways, isn't it? Why the need to legalize the use of propaganda when you already have an entire mainstream media establishment lacking to the White House, reprinting government press releases without question, selling wars, and carrying water for the administration? In fact, aside from everything I just mentioned, the Pentagon already spends $4 billion a year to influence public opinion, and the Department of Defense also spends hundreds of millions of dollars on information campaigns in countless countries occupied by the U.S. military. But perhaps even more disturbing than all of this is the fact that the CIA has already been infiltrating the biggest press institutions since the early 1950s. One has to look no further than Operation Mockingbird, a secret CIA campaign to spread disinformation and false stories to foreign governments during the Cold War. It did this by manipulating the media into focusing on propaganda, sabotage, and subversion. It was later revealed in congressional hearings that the CIA program consisted of literally paying off editors and reporters at most mainstream news outlets. The New York Times, CBS, Time, The Washington Post, Newsweek, AP, Reuters, and countless more. In one instance, a journalist named Joseph Alsop, who's alleged to have been one of the most prominent journalists working under Operation Mockingbird, wrote foreign affairs articles that appeared in over 300 publications. So, isn't it nice to know that the supposed watchdogs of the government can be so easily bought? Even though the intent of this program was to focus on matters outside of this country, it undoubtedly influenced everyone living here at the time. People to this day could still be reading and referencing these articles, not knowing that they're completely fake. And sure, this is more than 50 years ago, but let's face the facts here. Our media is much worse now and has been much more easily compromised now.
Well, I've been a journalist for about 25 years, and I was educated to lie, to betray, and not to tell the truth to the public. But seeing right now, within the last months, how far how the German and American media tries to bring war to the people in Europe, to bring war to Russia. This is a point of no return, and I'm going to stand up and say it is not right what I have done in the past, to manipulate people, to make propaganda against Russia, and it is not right what my colleagues do and have done in the past, because they are bribed to betray the people, not only in Germany, all over Europe. The reason writing this book was that I am very fearful of a new war in Europe, and I don't like to have this situation again, because war is never coming from itself. There is always people behind it to push for war. And this is not only politicians, this is journalists too. And I just have written in the book how we have betrayed in the past our readers just to push for war, and because I don't want this anymore. I'm fed up with this propaganda. We live in a banana republic and not in a democratic country where we have press freedom, where we have human rights. If you see the German media, especially my colleagues who day by day write against the Russians, who are in transatlantic organizations and who are supported by the United States to do so, well, people like me, I became an honorary citizen of the state of Oklahoma in the United States. Just why? Just because I write pro-American. I wrote pro-American. I was supported by the Central Intelligence Agency, by the CIA. Why? Because I should be pro-American.
Like it or not, technology has forced media organizations to change the way news is produced, delivered, and consumed. Now, a new study warns the next wave of disruption poses an existential threat to the future of journalism. RT's Marina Pornaya explains.
While Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms have been blamed for facilitating the rise of fake news, the potential downfall of journalism is expected to come from the evolution of artificial intelligence. According to a report released by the Future Today Institute, voice interface technology like Amazon's Alexa and Google Home will be one of the biggest challenges for media organizations within the next 24 to 36 months. The Institute estimates by 2023, 50% of interactions that consumers have with computers will be voice-based. Question is, once consumers are speaking to their machines about the news, what happens to the integrity and business model for journalism? According to researchers, new technologies may lead to a future where tech firms like Google and Amazon control the news and news organizations turn into the customer providing content. Media companies are being encouraged to familiarize themselves with current and emerging tech trends that are bound to radically change the news landscape in the years ahead.
In the future, fake news might look more real than ever. You can probably spot a photoshopped image, but what about when artificial intelligence is making the fakes? Software can already be used to control someone's facial expressions in a video. This program, called Face-to-Face, uses neural networks to imitate faces, turning people into virtual puppets. Add fake audio and you can have a politician saying whatever you wanted on camera. A Canadian startup named Lyrebird says it can synthesize anyone's voice using just a few minutes of recorded speech.
This night I am happy to share with you a small announcement about a cool startup called Lyrebird.
Adobe, the creator of Photoshop, is working on its own technology called Voco, which is supposed to be used to edit dialogue in movies and commercials.
The text and audio should play back at the same time.
I kissed Jordan 3 times.
You've probably already used basic versions of this sort of AI technology. Art filters made by companies like Prisma and Facebook also use neural networks to change how pictures look. And a popular app named FaceApp uses the same tech to transform people's faces, making you look young or old or changing your expression. The thing is, digital fakes are already pretty common, from photoshopped images like these hoaxes from Hurricane Harvey to airbrushed Instagram selfies. But what happens if this technology is used maliciously? For example, we know that governments already use bots to spread fake news online. This year, the Oxford Internet Institute found that half of all Twitter accounts talking about Russian politics were bots. AI could make these programs more convincing, or it could create fake photos and videos for them to share. And if this sort of fake content becomes easy for anyone to make, what does that mean for court cases and criminal evidence? This technology is still in its infancy though, and it's currently pretty easy to spot a fake. They're usually low resolution and blurred, but it won't stay this way for long. Jeff Clune, a professor at the University of Wyoming who works on creating imagery using AI, says these pictures will be HD within a decade, and that even he is sometimes fooled by fakes. People send me real images and I start to wonder if they look fake. And when they send me fake images, I assume they're real because the quality is so good, he told The Verge last year. This means in the future, we'll have to be more careful than ever to check where our news is coming from and ask ourselves, does this look fake? Does this seem real? It's just bad luck that even without AI messing us about, answering these questions in 2017 seems harder than it ever has before.
We present a novel real-time facial reenactment method that works with any commodity webcam. Since our method only uses RGB data for both the source and target actor, we are able to manipulate YouTube videos in real time. Here we demonstrate our method in a live setup. On the right, a source actor is captured with a standard webcam. This input drives the animation of the face in the video shown on the monitor to the left. A significant difference to previous methods is the re-rendering of the mouth interior. To this end, we resynthesize the mouth interior of the target actor using video footage from the training sequence based on temporal and photometric similarity. As we can see, we are able to generate a realistic and convincing reenactment result. Here we show a close-up of the footage from the previous live reenactment. The input video stream is shown on the left. Note that the target actor is re-rendered in a neutral pose. On the right, we can see the final output of our method.